Hi everyone, I'm Swing. I'm a photographer as well as an art educator. Today, we're going to be making a piece of artwork that looks like this. Does it remind you of something? This piece of artwork which we're going to do together is inspired by a photograph titled Labourer by Ho Koon Sang, which you can find in the National Gallery, Singapore. So let's take a look at the photo. So let's take a good look at this photo. What do you see? What is the first thing which caught your attention? Do you think the shadows look a bit strange? And can you imagine how the photo will look like without the shadows? Let's take a look at the materials which you will need. A piece of watercolor paper, brushes, palette, watercolor paint, glasses of water, kitchen towel, colored pencils, a torch, as well as an object of visual interest. So what I have chosen here is a teapot. I thought a teapot is going to cast some really interesting shadows. So what you do not want to do is to perhaps choose something too simple, like a ruler. And I think the shadows cast by a ruler will not be as interesting. All right, so let's put away all the paint for the moment. And what we have here is the teapot, paper, torch, and some colored pencils. So what I intend to do is to cast the shadow of the teapot onto this paper so that I can start tracing its outline. Right? So I can just do it right here. Right? So this is the torch I have. And when I point the light source towards the teapot, you can see that it projects a shadow. Or should I say a shadow is cast, right? If I were to move my torch further away, or if I were to bring it closer, if I were to slant the angle in which I am aiming at the object, or if I were to just put it higher up, the shape of the shadow changes, right? So I'm just going to maybe rotate this a bit, and I want to capture the very first shadow that looks like this. Right? So if you're afraid that the paper may move when you're tracing, some bits of tape will be useful. Let me just put some tape over here. Okay, so now it shouldn't be moving. And why do we have three color pencils? Because we're going to have overlapping shadows in a while. All right, so so that it's not confusing, we are just going to trace the very first shadow by using a color pencil, in this case orange. You can use any color pencil that you wish to. It doesn't have to be orange. And what you can see is that I have just done the first outline of the shadow. All right, so let's change positions. All right, so let's move the pot to the right, and let's see whether there's an angle over here which is of interest. We can make the two shadows overlap each other. Right, so the first one was already traced in orange. Maybe the second one. You can test out the compositions, right? Because there's so many ways in which you can place it. So you test out the different ways that looks good to you. And after that, we are going to do the trace again. So I'm going to use another color pencil this time. Right, so let me just try to trace it. And there we have it. We have got a second outline which overlaps the first. Right, so let's reposition the teapot back to the left and again experiment with different possible positions. Right, so this is going to be the third shadow which we are going to outline. So maybe after testing out various positions, you have decided on one, right? So it's always a good idea to have some overlapping parts. And I'm going to use my color pencil again, right? This time around it's a different color, and I'm going to start tracing just like what I did for the past two shadows. Okay, it doesn't matter if you cannot get it perfectly right, we just need to have the simple outline of the shape. Right, so let's switch off our torch and take a look. There we have it, 3 outlines of the teapot. Now we are ready to do some painting. So I have already put some watercolor over here, and we are just going to use one color. I have chosen blue, right? But you don't have to follow my example. You can use the color which you like. So I am going to start painting the shadow which is outlined in orange first, right? So let me just use some clear water, and I'm just going to put down a layer of water within the boundaries of the orange outline, right? So after we have done that, we can now use a bit of the blue paint. When you use watercolor, there's no need to use a lot of the paint, right? So, and when you are happy with the amount of water you have added, you can just start to paint it. So I'm going to continue filling up the inside of the orange outline. So what I'm doing is that again I'm coating the surface with some clear water first. Right, so this method of painting is called wet on wet. Right, so we have just done the first coat of a very light blue paint in the first shadow. Alright, so just allow it to dry for a while before we continue. Right, so the first layer of the blue paint is dry. If you do not wish to wait for too long, you can use a hair dryer, right? So that will speed up the drying process. And now we're going to put in color for the second shadow, which is outlined in this light green or cyan color, right? So we're going to do the same thing. Oh, before we do that, let me just paint give it a coat of water. And now you can see that it may get a bit confusing if we didn't use different colored pencils just now. Right, but we know that we are painting the inside of the outline in cyan. Right, so okay, we can start to do that again. And because of the translucent nature of watercolor, you can see that those parts which overlap the first shadow gets darker as a result. Right, let's give it more of the clear water. So I realized that I have made a mistake over here. It's okay. You can use the kitchen towel and just do a dab to dry up this part. Alright, coat this part with clear water. And let's give it some paint. Alright, so the second shadow is also painted in blue. So the next part is to look for the overlapping parts. Alright, so you can see that there are some areas which are overlapping, such as over here. Right, so I'm just going to like darken it a bit by giving it another coat of paint. And there's one part over here as well. So I'm going to continue with that. And I think we are ready for the third shadow. All right, so let's start to do the third shadow, which is the one with the blue outline. So again, over here I am coating the surface with some water first. Let's have some blue paint. The way the watercolor is translucent reminds me of pieces of glass. It's almost like stacking different colored pieces of glass together. It's quite important that you use different colored pencils to outline, because it can get quite confusing if you don't. So let's give it some paint. So with this new layer added, there are some overlapped parts, of course. So let's go and find out where are those parts which were overlapped twice. Right, so some of them we already indicated. Right, so I know like this part, for example, overlapped once. Make it a bit darker. And some parts are actually overlapped twice. For example, over here, there's a small part over here where all three shadows overlap each other. So that should be really dark. There's a triangular part here as well. Is there any I have missed? Over here. There we go. So I hope that you had enjoyed making this piece of painting using distorted shadows of everyday objects. Do come to the National Gallery Singapore, where you can see the photograph Labourer by Ho Koon Sang, as well as so many other pieces of artwork which will inspire you to explore your surroundings. See you!